I understand that the members opposite have been trying to derail any discussion of this bill from the beginning. They didn't even want to read it when it was first introduced. They voted against it on first reading. Then they asked the Prime Minister to weigh in and revoke the bill. Denied, of course, doing that, because I think they understand why it is that people reacted so badly in asking for the federal government to come in and interfere in our jurisdiction, because that is exactly what they and their party leader at the federal level has been enabling with the coalition they have in Ottawa for the last number of years. And I find it so remarkable that they've been talking about investment flight, capital flight, saying that it has been they're projecting that there would be unprecedented capital flight. Well, it'd be hard to beat, because there was unprecedented capital flight when they brought through the climate leadership plan. And that was once again partnering with our enemies who want to shut down our industry to try in some flawed way to get appeasement with Ottawa. And I don't know why it is they felt that they needed to suck up to Ottawa. It's not like Ottawa is a national government.
At approximately 1 minute after 1 a.m. Thursday morning, the province of Alberta, my province, officially hit the reset button on our relationship with the federal government, and boy, I could not be more excited about it. The flagship bill of our brand new freedom-loving Premier Danielle Smith, a bill better known as Bill 1, the Alberta Sovereignty within a United Canada Act, passed in the Legislature by a vote of 27-7 after a bit of a marathon debate session. Now, if we cut through the mainstream media rhetoric and the Liberal and NDP lies and fear-mongering, the bill actually does something really important. However, it's not a sovereignty bill. In fact, it will probably do a lot to extinguish the sovereignty movement here in Alberta by addressing so many of the concerns that are driving people to consider leaving Canada in general. The Act will address federal legislation that is unconstitutional, or that violates the charter rights of Albertans, or that interferes with provincial jurisdiction. It gives a legal framework for defending the division of powers that already exists between Alberta and the feds. It's the More Alberta, Less Ottawa law, and it's a framework that Quebec already exists under. In fact, a similar law just passed in Saskatchewan to little fanfare and even less opposition from their NDP party, which, as best I can tell, seems to be more sane and pragmatist than the one we have here in Alberta, that's for sure. Alberta's Bill 1 does not defy the Constitution. It doesn't allow Alberta to separate. And unlike what we see at the federal level, it doesn't allow Cabinet to issue unconstitutional orders in council, like how Justin Trudeau continues to do with his constant gun bans. It's a restraining order against the federal government, and it tells the federal government to stay in its lane. Great. Can't wait.
We are proud Canadians, and we are committed to building a strong and united Canada, but we cannot do that from a position of weakness. We must do that from a position of strength that the principles of our Constitution have provided us. Alberta and Canada are both worth fighting for, and that fight is with an out-of-control federal government in Ottawa that sees Alberta and all provinces as its subordinate rather than its partner. We must push back and take a stand. We must protect the rights of Albertans and our great province, and we must stand up for what is right.
But the carbon taxing, oil patch hating NDP MLAs were arguing without an ounce of irony or self-awareness that Smith's new law would create uncertainty that investors just don't like. Look at this.
The problem is this: the unintended consequences of this bill, if it does chase away international investment. I don't want to stand here in 6 months from now and say, I told you so, because we, the province of Alberta, loses. I'm not opposing this bill because I don't think that Alberta should stand up for Alberta. I do. I do not believe, from the conversations I've had with international investors, that this is the right mechanism.
What we do want is to create a resilient economy for the future, where we welcome investment, where we can quite easily say, yes, the Bank Act applies here, and when you pay your taxes, you know where it's going to go. When you put in a Water Act permit, you know what's going to happen. If you're an oil sands operator, you know what the future of the Joint Oil Sands Monitoring Agreement looks like. You understand your obligations under both navigable waters, federal species at risk, and the Lower Athabasca Regional Plan, both federal and provincial. The rules are clear, the expectations are obvious, and the investment climate is stable. The only way we get there is by rejecting this hot mess bill.
Well, what a delightful surprise, Mr. Speaker, to be able to likely wrap up our final opportunity to speak to this absolutely terrible piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker. And if somebody just wants to send me a note if I need to. Okay, wonderful. Mr. Speaker, I have had the opportunity to sit through the majority of this debate on the Job-Killing Sovereignty Act, Bill 1, that this government put forward, a flagship.
My apologies.
Oh.
We're on the hoist.
So, Mr. Speaker, I understand that the members opposite have been trying to derail any discussion of this bill from the beginning. They didn't even want to read it when it was first introduced. They voted against it on first reading. Then they asked the Prime Minister to weigh in and revoke the bill. Denied, of course, doing that because I think they understand why it is that people reacted so badly in asking for the federal government to come in and interfere in our jurisdiction, because that is exactly what they and their party leader at the federal level has been enabling with the coalition they have in Ottawa.
Now, whatever you think about the law, the NDP's dishonesty here is galling. These are the people who spent 4 years of appointing far left-wing radicals to key decision-making positions about the oil and gas sector. They brought in a job-killing, investment-deterrent carbon tax, which caused oil and gas investment to flee to friendlier jurisdictions like Saskatchewan, North Dakota, West Texas, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Venezuela. We're not hard of remembering. It's not all that long ago the NDP were in charge and the oil patch was at rock bottom. It's booming now. Now, this is a long clip. It's our new premier listing how the former NDP government and their partnership with the federal government hurt the Alberta economy. And friends, remember, this is but a partial list.
When I talk about the loss of investment that occurred because of this failed attempt at trying to chase after federal approval, the Climate Leadership Plan brought in a carbon tax, which, three aspects: carbon tax, phase out of coal, and an emissions cap. And one of the things that occurred, of course, was Northern Gateway ended up getting cancelled, cheered along by the members opposite. They never supported Northern Gateway, which would have done so much to help advance our economy. Energy East, once again, also got shut down with no support from the opposition. Coke Oil announced that they had 2 oil sands projects that they walked away from because of the uncertainty being created by the Climate Leadership Plan. We also had the Keep Hills plant. It had been operation, a coal plant, been operation for just 6 months when the actions of the members opposite forced it to shut down. We still have uncertainty in the electricity industry and in creating new generation as a result of those decisions. I was just meeting with a group of energy leaders in the retail side yesterday talking about how we, in the future, after 2035, it's uncertain how we're going to develop new natural gas plants because of the new requirements being brought in at the federal level. This is again a violation of our provincial jurisdiction. And then, of course, Western feedlots also shut down. They only reopened when the UCP formed government again. In the year after they got elected, there were 7,200 businesses that shut down. That's what capital flight looks like. And it was caused by the actions of the members opposite. So really, they should spare me any discussion about how much they care about the investment climate. Because if they cared about the investment climate, they wouldn't have started this track in the first place. And the reason this track is continuing is because of their coalition at the federal level, and this is part of the reason why they keep on trotting out Ottawa-based pundits to support their view, because this is the way they think the country ought to work, is that Ottawa ought to come in and tell us how to run our own affairs. The members on this side feel the opposite.
Having lived through 4 years of NDP's constant uncertainty, I will tell you, you never really knew how bad they were going to get and how radical they were going to be in their next insane piece of legislation. Bill 1, I think, does the opposite. It protects Alberta investors from radical anti-oil, anti-capitalist liberals in Ottawa. And it also exposes how short-sighted the NDP really are, and it exposes their own lack of confidence in themselves and their ability to ever form government in Alberta ever again. Let me explain. The Liberals are not always going to be in power in Ottawa. They are not always going to be the ones giving the NDP everything they want to seize power. One day there will be a Conservative government again in this country, I think. Maybe. And wouldn't an NDP provincial government want protection from deadly Conservative overreach out of Ottawa? You'd think, right? I guess they would if they ever thought they would hold power in Alberta ever again, but through their opposition to Bill 1, they are admitting they don't think they're ever going to be in charge of anything here ever again. And friends, that's perfectly fine by me. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. If you'd like to support our independent coverage of Alberta politics and the Alberta Legislature, please head on over to albertalegislaturereports.com.